Now, when Delia Robinson booked a manor house for her daughter's 21st birthday party, it was supposed to be a magical stay in a mansion, a treat she would remember for the rest of her life.
Well, her daughter will remember the stay, but for all the wrong reasons, I'm afraid. It hadn't been cleaned since a party 3 weeks before, and the police and RSPCA, well, they were in attendance as well.
Natalie Gray reports now on the haul that Airbnb have removed from their website after our investigation.
It certainly looks like a stunning property, a Grade 2 listed manor house and stables with 15 bedrooms close to Thetford Forest. No wonder Norfolk model Connie Robinson was thrilled to be hosting her 21st birthday party there.
Yes. It's like a film set.
It really is.
Or going back in time to...
Yeah. Great Gatsby.
Yes.
But Claremont Hall in Little Cressingham near Watton in Norfolk didn't live up to expectations. They say there was vomit in rooms, human excrement on the doorstep, unwashed crockery, rotting food, soiled bed linen and dirty towels. Outside, they claim an RSPCA inspector was concerned about the welfare of deer in an enclosure, chickens, peahens and a rabbit. They say a dead stag and fawn were found the next day.
We turned up and the whole place was completely trashed. Someone had had a huge party beforehand. Wanted somewhere really beautiful, somewhere memorable, but with character as well, which that just had all of that. But sadly it was memorable for different reasons. Not what I expected at all for my 21st.
They did contact the owner, who insisted the place had been cleaned. They say she eventually agreed to send cleaners, but they never turned up. Perhaps surprisingly, Connie and her family decided to clean up themselves. They had 60 guests coming from all over the country, and it was too late to put them off. Though half of them had to stay in nearby hotels because there was no heating or electricity. They held the event by candlelight, but couldn't cook or play music.
I would like an explanation. I'd like to understand what happened. I'd like to be absolutely sure that it's not going to be let to anybody else, because I do know that we're not the only people who've had these experiences. And I would like compensation. At least, I think it was 28 of our guests had to pay for hotel accommodation.
Breckland Council and the RSPCA both say they're investigating complaints about Claremont Hall. So what went so wrong? Well, I've spoken to the owner, a woman called Olena Lubinets, who lives in Cambridge. She wouldn't talk to us on camera, but she says the mother and daughter hadn't actually hired the hall. She says instead they'd paid for 4 cottages in the grounds and therefore shouldn't have been in the mansion at all. She admits, though, that the cottages and the hall weren't in a state to be let. She says that's because her manager had left. She said she had refunded the money and she denies that any animals were starving. Ms Lubinets says she blames them for blowing the electricity in the main house, causing pipes to burst in the cold weather. Connie and her mother are adamant their booking was for the entire property and deny any responsibility for the electricity failing. There are mixed reviews about Claremont Hall online, but the owner says out of 1,000 parties, there have only been 4 or 5 awful experiences. Natalie Gray, ITV News, Norfolk.
Well, I'm joined now by the consumer champion Helen Dewdney, who blogs under the name The Complaining Cow. Thanks for joining us, Helen. I just wonder, how often do you hear of horror stories like this one then?
Well, it's interesting. I hear them slightly more, but then that's probably because the popularity of these kinds of sites and lettings are increasing. So it's probably still the same proportion, but we're hearing about it more just because of the popularity of them.
Yeah, and just remind us of the consumer rights that people have of, say, using a site like that compared to an established hotel.
Well, we've got the Consumer Rights Act 2015, which means that services should be carried out with reasonable skill and care, and that things must match the description. So if they don't do that, whether that's the site or whether you've booked directly, you've certainly got those rights. And so therefore you would be entitled to a full refund or a partial refund, depending on how bad your experience is.
And it doesn't matter if it's Airbnb, a bed and breakfast or a 5-star hotel?
No, absolutely not. Those are your consumer rights and they will carry you through.
So then if someone arrives somewhere that they're not particularly happy with what they see, what should they do there and then?
Well, you should try and contact the owner and try and get something arranged. But really what you really want to try and do is right from the beginning get the landlord or the owner to be present when you actually arrive, and then actually make records of what the rooms are like, if there's any breakages, if there's any damages, and get that signed. If that's not possible, you should certainly go round the place that you've booked, take photos, take film on your camera, make sure it's dated, and contact the site or the landlord straight away and put forward your complaints and see what goes from there, because then you can also follow that up with writing if you decide to stay. But certainly you want your evidence to show that that a contract has been broken.
And are we getting better at complaining, do you think?
I don't know. I think we're sort of ranting better on social media, but whether people are actually aware of their rights, that that things have changed, that there are more rights for people, certainly since the Consumer Rights Act 2015. So whether we're actually getting better and more effective in getting that redress and results, I'm not so sure. I think certainly the Consumer Institute found out earlier this year that people were finding it harder to get their complaints heard.
OK, Helen, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for your words of advice today.
Thank you.